You're welcome.
Be available to us free, and I would like to recognize one of them is P.L.O. Could you stand up for recognition, please? Are you here? Mr. P.L.O. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. We are running out of time, and maybe after the Q&A, we will have another opportunity for that. And this time, I would like to invite Dr. Chris. Please, could you come forward?
My latest publication is there, so if you guys want to pick up a free copy, go ahead. 10 years ago, we honored Otieno. This is, I don't have enough copy, but you know, we can make another copy. And the research from Dr. Bruce Corey, you can find it online. That's it. Thank you. This is I cut it by half. So the last thing that I want is, what do we have to offer in Minnesota, Africans in Minnesota? Let me read that. A research done by Dr. Bruce Corey, I'm sure you probably know him, he's a Concordia University professor. The economic potential of African immigrants in Minnesota, funded by McKnight Foundation, I have to say that, I guess, in 2015. In Minnesota, African immigrants have collective income of at least 1.6 billion, making them an important engine of economic growth. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, aggregate income is almost 800 million. The report offers estimates of consumer spending in a wide range of areas, from retail spending to ethnic restaurants. A consumer survey of over 500 diverse African immigrants participants helped provide the basis for this estimate. It's just to express the potential of economic power of Africans in Minnesota. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Petros Haile. I'm from Eritrea, and I reside in Minnesota for over 4 decades. 40 years, and I still look young, right? Okay, I am a project coordinator for African Global Roots. That's a local quarterly magazine in Minnesota. Some of you probably seen it. And what I'll do is I'll just read it since I only have a minute. The magazine is a Pan-African hub for networking and entertainment. The mission is, AGR is designed to strengthen diverse African communities in Minnesota by promoting and nurturing their artistic expression, business, and professional development. In 1986, I was actively engaged in organizing Eritrean community in Minnesota. In 1994, I began to promote a Pan-African networking entertainment activities. 2000 formed the African Global Roots Organization, which is programs such as Artist of the Month, some of you probably remember. Organized the annual Pan-African Festival and the spoken word events on a monthly basis. Throughout the years, the AGR team managed to accomplish 3 major tasks: held a Pan-African ongoing monthly and annual events, recognized and honored Pan-African local artists, emphasized diversity on all its programs, and promoted service-oriented venues and local businesses. The other one I want to talk about out of those 3, I'm already done with one of them, is recognizing our local heroes. I'm referring to Otieno. I don't know if he's still here. The young Otieno. A Pan-African marketplace, the original idea came in 1993. And he was one of the initiator of the African marketplace in Minnesota. Those of you who stayed for the last 3-4 decades will remember him very well. The Afro-centric bookstore, Uhuru Books, the one on Lake Street. He was the only one. No other books were, African books were in Minnesota. He initiated it. And the community gathering place, I'm talking about Kwame Ture, Ian Smith. By the way, he chased Ian Smith out of Minnesota. And the South African divestment, he participated in all this. In most cases, he was providing his place. If not his place, he was engaged in activities throughout the Minnesota. And so I call it the Quiet Storm. Thank you.
Definitely want to respect time here. Good evening. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for being here. And so I was given the privilege of talking about the P.L.O. Lumumba Foundation. And as a community leader, you know, I was thinking maybe I was going to be given the opportunity to talk about, you know, the work that our community does. And so it's a privilege for me to combine those two because of time. I won't do my speech as a leader. I'm going to combine those two and save time. So let me just read what I wrote. To the leadership team of DPI, chaired by our very own president, Dr. Chris Omare, for the job well done for bringing our honorable guest to Minnesota. If you guys saw the original poster of Professor Lumumba's US tour, it did not include Minnesota. And so that means somehow, some way, Dr. Chris and his team created some magic, and now we're sitting here acknowledging Professor Lumumba. To all community leaders, to the religious leaders, and to all the community members who are here today. Thank you for being intentional and choosing to come to this great event. Lastly, to the Honorable Professor Lumumba, to the First Lady, Her Excellence, Celestine Lumumba, and to your team. It's an honor to have you here, and we do not take it lightly. It is an honor and privilege to have been assigned this role to introduce the P.L.O. Lumumba Foundation. Again, my name is Hulda Mumanyi Hiltsley. I am Madam President of Mwanyegatinge, the largest Kenyan immigrant organization in Minnesota, and I dare say the US. If you are part of the Mwanyegatinge organization, please stand up. Let's show Professor Lumumba that we are strong here. If you're part of Manyagatigi organization, stand up. Yes, thank you. Awesome, thank you so much. So let me go straight to the assignment that I was given. The P.L.O. Foundation, the vision of the P.L.O. Foundation across the globe is to be a flagship of excellence through servant leadership. And this speaks volume about that man sitting right there. He is all about servant leadership. The vision is to work with the needy and the disadvantaged groups in our society in order to improve and enhance capacity for self-development and actualization. The motto reads like a true African proverb with a modern twist. Servant leadership is a mother's milk for sustainable development. The core values are justice, honesty, humility, integrity, and authenticity. And we all know Professor Lumumba has a guiding philosophy in everything he does. Just listen to his speeches. The philosophy for the P.L.O. Foundation is excellence through servant leadership. I'll repeat again, excellence through servant leadership. For those of you wondering, the P.L.O. Lumumba Foundation was established 30 years ago. So this is not something that just started yesterday. It's been there for 3 decades. And with the objectives of nurturing transformational leaders across African continent and truly across the globe at this point. There are 3 ways how it does that. Participating in various economic activities geared towards uplifting the underprivileged in rural African communities, to promote and restore the pride of African culture, identity, diversity, through our collective activities. And lastly, since our establishment, they have been self-supporting except for occasional support they have received from friends and organizations of goodwill. So that means there's work for us to do. They have continued to change lives across the globe and increase the quality of life for many. Currently, they are presented in 38 countries in Africa and 10 countries in the diaspora. And I believe in the next couple of years, he's going to take over the whole entire world. The objectives of the foundations are as follows: to nurture young Africans by conducting mentorship programs and various youth activities across Africa, to promote education through establishing learning centers, book donations, publications, awarding bursaries to the needy youth to enable them to achieve their academic goals, to promote health among people living in rural and low-income urban areas by organizing formal medical camps and health awareness campaigns, to nurture servant and transformative leaders, including women. I love that. To participate in various economic activities geared towards improving the standards of living among people in low-income and rural urban areas. Already there, you can tell that there's so many places you can plug yourself in. And if you didn't know, the P.L.O. Foundation programs are aligned with the following 7 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set by the United Nations: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. If I may note, the foundation also is aligned with the African Union's agenda of 2063, which has been coined as the Africa's Blueprint for Master Plan for transforming Africa into a global powerhouse for the future. And this is exactly what he's trying to promote. Professor P.L.O., if you may permit me to challenge ourselves as the diaspora, whether or not you are a follower of P.L.O. Lumumba and his work, through his foundation, he has given us tangible action points for us to participate where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find something that you can pull all your passions, strengths, and skills from the many opportunities mentioned above and plug yourself in. Dedicate your time and resources and be part of the solution. So, Professor Lumumba, my one request as you give your remarks tonight, which we are all looking forward to, is that you give us action points. You leave us with action points so that this does not become another speech. It does not become another event where we come and just sit, and then after tonight, we forget about it. Let's check in with the organization and see if we have tapped into those action points that you're going to give us tonight. I dare challenge those of us in the diaspora to participate beyond just sending money home. My friend Wakili mentioned here, our issue is not participating. When you participate, things happen. But we are so quickly to just speak. We are keyboard warriors. What are you doing? Ask yourself, how are you participating? All we are known for is our billions of dollars we send annually to Africa. A good example is this. The Kenyan Constitution grants those of us Kenyan citizens, no matter where we are, and no matter who we are, the right to vote. But yet, how many presidents would be elected before the diaspora of Kenya can exercise their right to place a vote and get representations within the Kenyan government? How long will we sit here and accept mediocrity of our government in the name of this is just politics as usual, and that's just the way things are? There's a Kenyan saying that goes like this: kwa ground, things are different. How long will we continue to fuel the Kenyan economy without billions, and yet in the diaspora we cannot exercise that right? Now, how does that make sense to continue to allow us to happen? Thank you. The question is, what are we doing to change the status quo? For the most part, we Africans in diaspora want the same thing. We want social, economic, and economic sustainable for African continent and its people. But our biggest issue is that we don't want to put in the work that it takes to create that sustainable results we want. We refuse to support good, moral, and ethical leaders because of our greed, and in most cases, our lack of content. I dare challenge each one of us to support good governance in Africa and see what happens. When good leaders are supported, accountability, and held accountable, they bring tangible results to the whole and not just a selective view. Professor Lumumba, through the P.L.O. Foundation, has clearly set tangible and applicable action points for sustainable Africa that is up to us to make the decision to join the movement. In the words of this African proverb, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Professor Lumumba is going fast, just by himself. What he has been able to accomplish that far, the only way he's going to go far is if we support him. To close, Africa can only redefine herself if we, the people, decide to put our pride aside, act with moral integrity, be courageous enough to step out, speak up against injustice, and willing to invest our time, social, educational, most importantly, our economic resources, our money, to bring about the change we want to see in the African continent. We, the diaspora, can no longer ignore this call by Professor Lumumba and his fight to join this fight, because it's our fight as well. And we can no longer sit on the sideline and wait for magic to suddenly happen. We need to think about the legacy we are leaving behind for generations to come, and that goes beyond family ties. Professor Lumumba is setting this very example through the establishment of his foundation. Only then will we harness the hope beyond limitations. And lastly, Professor Lumumba, I want to wish you a very happy birthday. That was yesterday. Thank you so much.
First lady, because you're the first lady of this event. Good evening, fellow community leaders. My name is C. Nigeri. I'm an entrepreneur in the United States. I have 4 companies and 3 companies overseas. I am here representing Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, Minnesota chapter. On behalf of Nigerians in Minnesota, Professor Lumumba, I say welcome. And on behalf of all black people, there's a song that says, anywhere you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. That's our pride. That's our pride. I wish I have enough time to tell all of us, look at the person next to you, the same skin. All right? That's our pride. If all of us, I don't care if you're Nigerian, you're Liberian, you're Ethiopian, you're Kenyan. If all of us can come together, there will be no more word-like discrimination of the black. There's a saying that says, if the oppressors can come together, the person oppressing us will now turn around and we will now become the oppressor to the person oppressing us. Our problem as blacks, I'm telling everybody here today, that's why I love this man's vision. We're not coming together. We need to start that now. My time is 1 minute, and I pray that God continue to bless the likes of Professor Lumumba, Dr. Arikana, that have been telling us, the diasporans, that to rescue Africa is us. Thank you, and good evening, everyone.
That's the problem. When you give professors chance to talk, it's never ending. At this time, let's welcome Mr. Z.
Professor Lumumba and First Lady and my fellow African, it's my pleasure to speak in front of you. My name is Tafari Tafa. I am Ethiopian. I am Oromo from Oromo community, and I am going to speak not about Oromo community, but the organization I represent. I am a founder and the CEO of African Light Book and the Coffee Shop. And let me tell you a story how I come up with this. I came here in 2017 as a visiting professor. I was teaching at Norwich University in Vermont. And in Vermont is all white state. And there is no African at all, you can say. And you know, people say there is 1% dark skin, 1% there or there. And so in the university, I had few African students, 2 students from Kenya, 1 student from Rwanda, and from South Africa, and so on. And so I was not happy because, you know, I want to see my fellow African. And even though Vermont is really a very good state, to your surprise, the first state to abolish slavery in 1776. Okay, it is they don't know slavery at all, and so I said, why I don't come here? And one of my friends said, Minnesota is a state with 10,000 lakes and 10,000 immigrants. That's true. That's true. And so, you know, I was speaking about Africa, but just I was speaking about Africa to white people, and they don't understand it. And so I came here. I am really very happy. And then I got a job. I am assistant professor at University of Northwestern, and then I start to teach there. I started to teach African literature, and while I was, you know, they say teach African literature, and I have been teaching African literature, and I say, okay, that's good. And then I ordered books, and then they say, as everybody does, I ordered Achebe. He is a father of African literature, we know, and then I couldn't find other books. We know Ngugi is very famous. I met him actually, and I had a chance and honor to speak to him, but we couldn't find his book, and we couldn't find other books too. And then I told my department head they couldn't find it. And how on earth? We have many books, but there is no books for the student. And then I said, I should come up with something. I should, before I came here in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, I had a bookshop. And so I have experience, and I opened a bookshop here. And when I opened a bookshop here, no one is coming. You know, no one buy a book. Look, I have this book. I love it. Udosan, you know him. He is the father of African American Studies. And the title is Miseducation of, I can't say this word. I don't like this word. I have been listening to Professor Lumumba a lot, and each of I can say we have the same experience, and so people are not coming to my shop and they are not buying a book because we are not a reader. And somebody said that if you want to hide something from Africa, put it in a book. So, what do we want? What do we want? Okay, what do we have first? Forget what we want. What do we have? Especially we are from East Africa and we have coffee. We have a best Ethiopian coffee, a best Kenyan coffee, a best Rwandan coffee. Okay, why I don't sell coffee too? And then I say, okay, if I have to sell a coffee, I have to buy from the farmers. And I start to contact them. And I know importance. And now what we are doing, we are selling books. We are, of course, tankers, especially during Corona. Our physical shop is closed, and we have online shop now, and we are going to reopen actually in a month. But now we are selling a lot of books, but we are also selling coffee from Africa. And so our coffee is very, we don't buy from anybody. We buy from our farmers. We want to help our farmers. We send them money, and then they send us their coffee through our importers. So that the farmers send their children to school, and they go to the hospital, and they live a good life. And that's our vision, and I think you share our vision. And so you can come to our shop. You can visit our shop, www.africanlife.shop. And thank you so much.
Thank you. To come up. 1 minute, please. Thank you. I'm going to enforce the 1 minute with you. It's going to begin with you now.
Thank you, Madam Ngozi. Again, I know obviously all of you have heard from me, but since I am here to represent a specific group of people within our community, please allow me to reintroduce myself. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ian Owundo. I am currently the president of the Uganda Association of Minnesota, which is an organization that brings Ugandans together here in Minnesota, Professor Lumumba. What an honor and privilege it is to be here with all of you this evening. Welcome, and thank you for coming to be a part of this momentous day. It always, and as many of you probably already know, it always brings joy to my heart to see the beautiful faces of our community when we all come together. So thank you very much for being here today. There are so many groups and community leaders who came together to make this day possible, Professor Lumumba. We appreciate each and every one of you. Events like these highlight Professor Lumumba's many achievements. Bringing together the sons and daughters of Africa throughout the globe is what keeps our heritage strong, whether we're in Africa with all its beauty, or in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. Building community wherever he goes is something I've always admired about the professor. Building community is something I'm very passionate about, and I hope my efforts here in Minnesota and beyond can someday measure up to his. Many of us have traveled to the United States and across the globe seeking prosperity, safety, and of course opportunity. But while we've done that, we have always held true to our strong roots as well as our identity, and that is something I am very proud of. For many of us, that means doing the hard work to redefine the lens through which the world sees and experiences Africa and our diverse but beautiful, rich culture. Make no mistake, and I think most of you, if not all, would agree with me that as a community, we work tirelessly every single day to connect with and introduce our traditions and our heritage to the broader community around us. That is something I am very, very proud of. That is something we are very, very proud of. It is our time and our responsibility, Professor Lumumba and everybody in this room, to build a community that we desire. It is our time to build a future we envision for ourselves, for our children, and for our children's children. And the way we do that, brothers and sisters, is we take our values to the P.L.O box. We run for local office in our communities, something that we are already doing. We join local organizations that push for justice for all. We hold our leaders accountable and to a higher standard as they do the important work of serving the communities they represent. We educate ourselves about the struggles of those around us and keep striving for change. The change we seek will come from us, this room. We are the hope, and that hope goes beyond any limitations. We must work to redefine what that hope looks like for Africa. I am reminded of JFK's famous quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." And as you live here today, think to yourself, what can you do for your country? For our countries? For Mother Africa? For the world? This is our time. This is our moment. The challenge and question before us today is, can Africa redefine herself? Brothers and sisters, not only do I believe that Africa can redefine herself, I believe Africa is a major player in realizing a more sustainable future and world. Let us collectively embrace this moment. Let us collectively embrace and continue to fight for a better tomorrow for all. Thank you.
I just want to be quick, because I know time is very important for all of us. I was given the job of introducing many of our communities that call Minnesota home. As you know, Professor, there is a diverse African population here in the state of Minnesota. They come from many parts of Africa, right? And this is also their new home. This is where now they're running for office, many offices. Some have been elected into office. We have West, East African community. We have the East African community. We have our Kenyan community. We have the Somali community, both from proper state Somalia and also in Kenya and also in Ethiopia as well. We have a Tanzanian community as well established. We have our Ugandan community. Ian can attest to that, he's right here, among many other ones. The migration of Kenyans and Somalis is almost about the same time to Minnesota. And the population has been also expanding a lot. There is a lot of diverse ideas and diverse places that they call home. We have Minneapolis population. We have population here on this side of Minneapolis, as we call it, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, and many other places. So, Professor, it's a community that is growing and getting to know each other as Africans. because they do share the same space. This is, like I said, their home. And we have elected people from here too as well. And as much as recently, we can for sure say that at the end of the day, that people, we all remain and it's about our Africanism and who we are and promoting the idea of Pan-Africanism. So I'm glad you're here, and I just wanted to quickly share it. I hope I did it right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ian and Ngozi as well. I'll be short because I know time is a little bit running out, but I would just like to quickly say, P.L.O. Lumumba, karibu sana. Welcome to the land of, they say 10,000 lakes, but I'd like to say the land of more than 10,000 Africans. So, karibu sana. So, on behalf of my fellow Kenyans who have been here, nasema karibu. Mind just to say that I know we'll talk more later, but for me as a person, I would like to echo what the incoming governor from Nigeria said, Mr. Ogeri, that for me, you have been an inspiration. And it's because of folks like you who have stood up and talked about the ideals of One Africa, that someone like me is standing here today and willing to do more in terms of making sure that Africa comes together. So, like Brother Ogeri, I'm also, I would say, the next incoming Kisii County Senator. I have pitched my candidacy based on not just because I can't, but it's because I think having been here for a while, almost 20 plus years now, it's become a point where I think we have to give back to where we came from. Sending money, sending all kinds of resources is good, but I think we have, as diaspora, have to play a part in terms of how that leadership of governance in Africa works. So it's in that regard that despite all the goodies that I have here in America, I have chosen to say that I have to go back. Because if you look back in the past, the folks who have actually moved Africa or even Kenya ahead came here in the diaspora and went back and gave back. So if we don't give back, then I don't know where we'll be. So in that regard, Prophet Lumumba, I'm doing this because you inspired me as a Pan-Africanist. And through your mentorship virtually, I am pushing myself to go back and do it. So again, thank you, and karibu sana Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Professor Lumumba, First Lady, elected officials, all protocols observed. It's really an honor to be at your presence today. As everybody else has said, there's so many of us who have been really inspired by all of the speeches that you've done and everything that you've said. We're still watching you every day. We have a lot of quotes, but I'm not going to go where I had to went today. So we really appreciate you taking the time and be able to come over and talk to us today. So I know everybody is excited to hear your remarks, and this is not all about us. However, let me introduce a little bit myself. I know I have about 3 minutes. So my name is Nasibu Sareva, Executive Director of the organization called African Development Center. We are the statewide community development financial institution. We do some housing, financial education, and business development work. We run the largest small business lending for African immigrants in the country. And my intention is to grow that platform so that we can be the community that with this platform, when everybody wants to talk about our community, will come to us and ask us, what do we need to do for our own community? and not dictate on what they need to do for us. And that includes our economy, that includes all types of investment. And for us to be able to do that, we have to grow that, our own economy, our own investment, so that when they come to us, we can say, we can put $20 million, if we can put $40 million to actually invest our own community, and that's where we're heading towards. Last comment, again, I'm gonna try to be very brief. The reason why we're all here is because, again, if you all remember that, Africa was born in us. If you all remember that quote from Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Now, if there's only one thing that I'd like all of us to take it today after this meeting, especially my fellow diasporians of here in the state of Minnesota, is one quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, there's power in numbers, and there is power in unity. Guys, we all still work in silos. Thank you, my friend Lydian, for what you guys have done as Kenyans. I hope sooner rather than later, instead of saying Kenyan community, we'll talk about Pan-Africanism. I really believe that Minnesota can show the way in this country. If we continue to do what we do, we organize ourselves better, we work together, we'll be unstoppable. Thank you so very much, and have a good evening.
What have you done? That's a question for every one of us to answer. What do you plan on doing? I see this as a very critical meeting for us. It's a very rare opportunity for us to meet P.L.O. and his wife. And like we always say, behind every successful man is a woman. You see, that's why we need women, and that's why I'm here today. I would like to welcome Lillian to the podium. Are there Kenyans here? Are there Kenyans here? I know you are East Africans, you don't make noise, but please make noise today. I want you to make noise. I would like to welcome you.
Yeah, we're going to dominate here today, right? Kenyans, right? Thank you, Ngozi. Thank you, Ian. These are my friends and new friends. To introduce myself, my name is Lillian Otieno, and I wear multiple hats. First, I am the president of the Association of Kenyans in America, or otherwise known as AKIA. Our membership are mostly from Central Nyanza into Western. And then the other hat is I am also one of the co-founders of Minnesota Kenyans Association. Minnesota Kenyans Association is a consortium. It's a group of consortium that brings in Kenyan organizations under one roof. So here in Minnesota, we have a lot of Kenyan organizations, and that is okay, that is fine. It goes into cultural ethos, wherever you feel comfortable. So we have Wanyagitinge. My friend Hulda, the president of Wanyagitinge, is here, so she's a member of MKA. We also have the Kamba community president, Onesimus. He's here. Guys, wave and stand. So these are community leaders under MKA. We also have Mega. Dr. Muru is not here today. Their organization represents folks from mostly central Kenya. And then we also have Kotabga, which represents a lot of our Kenyans from the Rift Valley, the former Rift Valley area. So, you guys can see. So the reason why we came together is to have a clearinghouse of sorts, right? And I think it goes back into Pan-Africanism, right? We decided that while we can still maintain our individual identities, we thought our collective efforts and our collective power will give us a lot of leverage in making sure that we can assist ourselves and assist others. We are apolitical, but at the same time, we support and we want to encourage our members to get into civic engagement and to also make sure that we have a voice and we are represented, right? Because we live here. And so we have a lot of our community members who are interested in being in office or influencing policy. And so we want to make sure that our members can also do that. And as I said, the Minnesota Kenyans Association, I'm one of the co-founders, and I will be remiss if I don't introduce one of the other co-founders, my friend, Mr. Chui, who is here. Geoffrey, please stand up. So there's 4 of us who are the co-founders. Chui was the former president of Mwanyagitinge, and so Hulda took over after Chui. And then we have Mutune Mutisia, who is not here today, and so Onesmus took over after Mutune. And then we have Veronica Rotich, who is also not here today, and she was with Kotabgar. And then you have yours truly, myself, who is still president of AKIA. I'm trying to leave that office so that I can move forward, but I'm still serving. So, Professor Lumumba, we are so excited to have you here today, as well as First Lady. We really appreciate your presence. I have been listening to you like our learned friend here ever since I was young. I enjoy your speeches. You inspire us. You make us want to be better. We want to make sure that we break those shackles of colonialism and tell ourselves that we can do it, because we've seen African leaders who can do it. We know Rwanda was once not considered a place that would come up, and it is coming up. So how did that happen? There must be something that is going on there that we can also harness as a people and make sure that we do good and we develop our countries. So in here, we are also making sure that we are also representing ourselves and being involved in this community, because this is where we live. So it is not enough for us to only make sure that we are working towards developing Africa and developing our continent, but we are here, we can participate here, we can be part of this community, we can take whatever it is that we need to take from here in terms of either technology, education, and go back and help inform our lands. There's a lot of capital, social capital, there's a lot of smart people back in Africa, but I think a lot of times we know very well that it's an issue of governance that is taking us behind. So with that, I don't want to take too much time, I'm usually long-winded. I will end there, but I want to say on behalf of myself, on behalf of Minnesota Kenyans Association, and on behalf of everyone who has been planning this, I want to welcome you again, sir, together with your wife, to our beautiful city in Minnesota, and I look forward to your remarks. Thank you very much.
Ian, for that introduction. He exaggerated everything he said. Professor Lumumba, First Lady, my fellow leaders, it's a pleasure to be here. I have probably a different privilege to have been Professor Lumumba's student at both the University of Nairobi and Kenya School of Law. Professor Lumumba, I'm here to say that your class on judicial review sits very well with me nowadays as a practitioner of law in the United States. And I'm also happy to report that, sir, you remain an encyclopedia of legal maxima to date. I still remember your elucidation of the maxim, de minimis cura lex, to the supreme justices in the case of, you know the case, but Professor, it's a great honor again to see you in person. We as your students, and I believe the whole continent of Africa, owes you. There are very few scholars of your level that continue to pound the pavement to remind us of who we truly are. You could have spent your mental energies doing the work that the so-called analysts do nowadays on TV and everywhere, but you have chosen the path that makes you a hero to us. Thank you very much, sir, for doing it. I stand here also, as Ian said, as kind of person who likes to defy odds. I have told the entire world that come August of 2022, I'll be sworn in as the next governor in Nyamira County. And I do that knowing the hills, literal hills, and obstacles that I'll have to climb. And I know that because as late as last Sunday, I was climbing a hill in the middle of a rainstorm in Nyamira County. I just came back. I just want to say this. As diaspora Kenyans and diaspora Africans, that continent is looking up to us. It is not looking up to the people who have so gotten used to the corruption and the usual ways to change it. It's going to take us to swoop in, not as liberators, but as brothers and sisters who feel the pain. Why do we have to have diaspora care if our healthcare systems were working? If our money that we have to spend on people's health was not diverted to purchase of V8s and mansionettes that are 64 rooms in the middle of Nyamira County. I don't want, he said no politics. For me, politics is existence. When we ask our leaders to be accountable to us, we are not being political, we're just being human. So, Dr. Umar, every time you see me, as long as I live, I'll be talking about the welfare of my people and your people, and that's not politics. Finally, I would like to encourage you to really take a look at your own role as we go forward. It's easy for us to complain on WhatsApp, to post on Facebook, and talk about how Africa is rotten. How about you look in the mirror one day? What have you done or not done for your motherland, for your county, for your village, for your school, for your people? As for me, I have decided that I'll change it from within. What about you? Thank you very much.
Good evening all. It's an honor to be here today in the company of the professor and all you Pan-Africanists. My name is P.L.O. I'm representing Uhuru Bookstore. We've been providing Pan-African books in this community for the past 3 decades. In the 90s, we had a physical store, and we had the privilege of hosting the likes of Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, Black Power, you know him. We hosted him several times. One is one of the Pan-Africanists that we had. We also hosted Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad, very powerful guy in the 90s. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here today with another Pan-Africanist here. And I just want to say thank you.
We are morally obliged to support our loved ones back home. And we do send billions of dollars. Actually, Africans from sub-Saharan Africa send back about $48 billion every year. A lot of that money is for health. Unfortunately, that money is diverted as we know, right, by the recipient. So what we sought to do with the Care was to ensure that every dollar that we send for healthcare would be strictly spent for that purpose. Essentially, you pay the pharmacist directly, and you pay the physicians directly. But also, we know that it's very inefficient to send money through Western Union MoneyGram, right? You have high transfer fees on top of that. So with this platform, we wanted to enable you to pay even 50 cents for your uncle's malaria medication through our platform. And by lowering the cost of supporting our family members, we hope to include more and more people into healthcare in Africa. So, as we know, very often when we have a funeral back home, we spend $10,000 or $20,000. But when somebody is sick, we're not aware of it. Right? And perhaps $5 or $50 would have saved lives. So this is our motivation. That's the reason why we started this platform. I'm extremely excited to be part of this community, and I'm always very excited to be part of my African brothers and sisters community. And I hope that we have a very pleasant event tonight. I thank you for your patience and your attention to me. Thank you.
Ngozi and Ian Ondo, I would like you to take over the program from here, and we just go from there. Well,
Vice President, this is an Ebomani Bamunte, you can take care of everything. Thank you so much. I think you will introduce yourself, and you will run from there. We can call you back again and take over. All right. Next to him is our media director. His name is Manati Mweri, KDL TV, for those who live in the Twin Cities. And I think he's a guy who has interviewed a lot of people internationally, and he's a great asset to us as an organization. Thank you so much for the work. Next to you is Henry Mumani. He's the program director for DPI. He's doing a good job. Thank you. So, Professor P.L.O, the First Lady, Madam Celestine, the PA, Professor Lumumba, Christian, the host church, our elected leaders, our sponsors, different leaders from different nationalities that are here tonight. It gives me great pleasure, me as a president, to officially welcome you to this event. I know we have been waiting for this. My deputy has spoken well about our guest. We have heard about him, we have read about him, we have seen him, and we have benefited from the many messages and advice and whatever he has given us as a people. So we love the concept of Pan-Africanism because it's that idea that we need now. For us to be able to go through what we are in this global village, we really need that, and we thank you so much. So our DPI is just an organization that started 2 years ago. We were slowed down because of the COVID pandemic, but I'm glad that as we are opening up, this is our first event, and I'm glad we're hosting a very important person. So our mission as DPI is focused on governance and leadership. Where, as a group, we are trying to do a research and analysis of what we think as African countries, how we can do our programs, whether it's political, social, or economical. We're open to interacting with other organizations which have similar minds. or similar ideas. So because of the day is for Lumumba today, I want to direct you to our website where you can check us at www.diasporapi.com for more information. Our offices are here in Brooklyn Park, and our desire is to open offices all over, here in the US and back home, so that we are able to bring the resources we have together. So, P.L.O, the people you see seated here tonight, these are people with great ideas. They have resources. They are ready to interact. They are ready to listen to you. So I'm also asking you, as the people here today, we're engaging on many political issues. I know politics is very, very passionate to most of us, but today we decided that we're skipping that part. But in your private time, I know every human is political. You can later on talk to P.L.O if he has time to address any issues on political matters. I think you'll be ready to do that. So let me not take too much time. Again, let me thank you, let me welcome you, and feel free. Let's listen. Then at the end of the whatever speaker will share, we will ask you questions, and if any clarification is needed, then at that time we will do it. So thank you so much. You're most welcome. Feel at home, and we're here with you. Anything that you need, please let us know. Thank you so much.
So we all rise and pray. Let's pray. Our dear loving Father, we say that. We'll take this opportunity to thank you, praise you, honor you, and give you glory for this time you have brought us together here. The Lord, we can hear from our brother, from the soil of Africa, Professor P.L.O. We want to thank you for this man you have bestowed in him a lot of wisdom. Father, in heaven, as he stands to speak to us, may you give him the same wisdom you have given him before. So that, Lord, we can listen to you through him, because all this wisdom comes from you. And we pray that, Lord, if our leaders in Africa could listen to this wisdom of our brother, our countries will not be the same. They will be changed countries. We pray that, Lord, as we have gathered together here as brothers and sisters from all walks of life, may you bring unity amongst ourselves. We are together here with Christians, Muslims, and even Hindus, and the other religions, Lord. We pray that, Lord, may you give us the unity of purpose, and may we see you because you are the great I am. As we start now, and as we finish, we pray that, Lord, you will be with us. We ask all these blessings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah, good evening and welcome. Yeah, we are so happy to have all of you here today, and it is a great occasion. First of all, I would like us to welcome P.L.O. Lumumba and his wife Celestine, and the PA Christine. I just want us to do like the African way and just give Coffee a kilo. You clap 3 times and say welcome. Okay. Thank you. So first of all, I would like to welcome the diasporans organizations that have been working with us, most of the African communities, and some of the African and African American organizations that have been working with us. We would like to welcome and say thank you to the teams that made it possible, from the board members to the executive planning committees, the church organizations, and everybody in that perspective. And would like also to say a big thank you to the sponsors, starting with HELP. We have Diaspora Care, we have Uplifted Care, Transatlantic Law, and Uhuru Books. Welcome to all the community leaders and all the distinguished guests. Now today we are so happy to have P.L.O. Lumumba over here. He graced us his, just having him here is a very big event for us. Because I remember when I started listening to P.L. Lumumba, I was a young man. And I used to be excited listening to him because I always had to have a dictionary with me. And it stimulated me, and I learned new words. But later on, I came to learn that he was a Pan-Africanist, and some of the information he was passing through was very informative information. And I ended up just being a big fan to P.L.O. Lumumba. The Lumumba Foundation is one of the big organizations it's running in more than 38 countries. And we welcome you all. The more I listen to the name Lumumba, it reminds me of a revolutionary names like Patrice Lumumba and the Malcolm X's and everybody else. Pan-Africanism is not a burden to any one man or woman alone, but some are called to lead the special share of its challenges. It's a duty that you discharge with dignity, determination, and distinction that is widely admired. Please keep up the fire. As Martin Luther King said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent. Now I'm going to introduce the chairman of DPI, Dr. Chris Omare, and he's going to also introduce all the rest of the members. Welcome, Chris, on the podium, and thank you all for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guest, our honorable guest speaker, our brother, our father, our son, our fellow Pan-African, our very young Professor Lumumba and his wife, Karibu Minisara. I am thrilled this evening to share our platform with someone I've admired for so many years, a true catalyst who understands the incredible potential and possibilities of our time and for our Africa. Someone who understands the multi-sectorial and targeted interventions dearly needed to lift us. Someone who believes our collective propensity to fuel the power to realize our maximum potential. Professor Lumumba is a dynamic speaker, an enigmatic speaker, who inspires us all, young and old, who challenges us to dream big and achieve more through improved governance and social justice, through diversity and inclusion, through economic leverages, youth empowerment, and women in leadership. His insights come from his vast work experiences in government, academic careers, and civil society. Professor Lumumba is a professor of public law, an author, and holder of LLD, Doctor of Laws, on the Law of the Sea from the University of Ghent, Belgium. Also holds honorary degrees of Doctor of Letters from University of Cape Coast in Ghana, and a degree of Doctor of Science from Bells University of Technology, Nigeria. Professor Lumumba completed his Masters of Law degrees and Bachelor of Law degrees from the University of Nairobi, trained in human rights at the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, University of London in England. He studied humanitarian law at the Raoul Wallenberg Institute of the University of London, Sweden, and international humanitarian law in Geneva, Switzerland. With his legal credential, he has played critical roles in both academia and government. He is an advocate of the High Courts of Kenya and Tanganyika and a certified mediator. He is a fellow of the Institute of Certified Public Secretary of Kenya, a fellow of the Kenya Institute of Management, and an honorary fellow of the African Academy of Science. He is the chairman of Farafina Investment Group in Monrovia, Liberia, and the Economic Strategic Growth and Development Initiative for Africa based in Nigeria. He is the former Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Kenyan School of Law, a former Secretary of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, and a former Director of what is now Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. He plays a strategic role in our civic society. He is the founding trustee of the African Institute of Leaders and Leadership and founding chairman of the Association of the Citizens Against Corruption. He was the founding dean of Kabarak University School of Law, a former lecturer at the University of Nairobi and the United States International University of Africa, and Wedner University in the United States, Nairobi, South Sudan. Professor Lumumba has received numerous international recognition, my favorite ones of all, a Lifetime of Achievement Award for Patriotism and Advocacy by the African Forum, and a recognition by the New African magazine that's the 100 most influential African. You wonder when he sleeps, right? Ladies and gentlemen, with thunderous applause and vigelegele, please join me in welcoming.
Let me start by acknowledging the organizers of this evening's gathering. I cannot mention everybody by name, but I've had the advantage of listening to the men and women drawn from different countries across the continent of Africa who have given testimonies which speak to the residents of the mother continent in their hearts and minds. Let me also say how glad and humbled I am to have received this invitation to be present with you this evening and to share with you my thoughts on the role that the diaspora can and, in my view, must play in redefining the continent of Africa. It is very easy in a forum such as this and forums similar to this to talk about Africa as if it was an academic or intellectual curiosity. But that would be a luxury that one cannot and must not afford, because Africa is real. It is real because it's the resident of nearly 1.5 billion human beings who many years ago have passed through many tribulations. It is the home of Africans who at one time were enslaved. And one who wants to talk about history can talk about that, and many have. Indeed, as I walk here, I had the advantage of seeing some of the most celebrated books written by Untitled Chapter, who speaks with greater depth about pre-colonial Africa. And one can talk about that. One can also talk about the history of the colonization of the continent and the impact that it has had and continues to have on the continent. But that is for another day. But yet there is a sense in which that colonization colonization is what defines Africa in a fundamental way, because the project is still alive and well. When we talk about redefining Africa, it must not be lost on us that the continent continues to be divided and undermined because of that very recent history of colonization. We are the only continent in the world, as you well know, that still describes ourselves as Francophone, to mean that we speak French, so that if there was an African meeting, the Malians, the Mauritanians, the Togolese, the Beninois, the Gabonese, the Congolese, the Senegalese, the Tunisians, the Moroccans, the Chadians, the Burkinabe, and the Côte d'Ivoirians would describe themselves as Francophone. These are things that divide us and define us. And those who claim to speak English, Kenyans, Ugandans, Tanzanians, Sudanese, South Sudanese, Malawians, Zambians, Namibians, and many others, including Zimbabwe, would say that they are Anglophones. And that too defines us and divides us. When you look at the Portuguese, the Cabo Verdeans, the Guinea-Bissau, the Angolans, the Mozambicans would define themselves as Lusophones because they claim to speak English, or rather speak Portuguese. And that defines and divides us. There is something that today is also described as Arabophone. Those who speak Arabic. If you go to Sudan, Egypt, to a certain extent Tunisia and Libya, and even Mauritania, they define themselves as such. I will not have mentioned Djibouti, I'll not have mentioned Somalia, I'll not have mentioned Ethiopia, I'll not have mentioned Comoro or Seychelles or Madagascar. But there is a sense in which that is how we define ourselves. One can speak about that when one is talking about redefining Africa, and those of you who are in the diaspora. In a manner of speaking, the African question and African condition can be said to be one that is properly understood and well written about. Indeed, many times, when I have the occasion such as this to speak about Africa, my mind normally goes back to the 23rd, 24th, and 25th days of the month of May, 1963. At that time, 32 African countries had regained their independence or flagged independence from their erstwhile colonizers. And the leaders who are present in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on that day, to the man, interpreted and understood the circumstances of Africa clearly and articulated the circumstances eloquently. that Africa, having been humiliated, having been abused by the colonizers, had three clear enemies: disease, poverty, and ignorance. That is how clear the diagnosis of the African problem was. And it was there the collective view of the leaders of the day that the entire independence movement was going to be designed to address those issues. That because we had been abused so much, we would not allow our health care systems to collapse. That the leaders were going to work to ensure that life expectancy improved. That they were going to ensure that maternal mortality was reduced. That they were going to ensure that infant mortality was eliminated, and fundamentally that the disease burden would be reduced if not eliminated. That is how clear the diagnosis was in 1963. They were also clear that ignorance was a contributing factor, and that we had been so thoroughly under-educated or miseducated, as Carter G. Woodson had said a little earlier in 1933 of the American in his book, Miseducation of the Negro, which word he did not want to verbalize. And the most important thing was that we did appreciate that we had been miseducated, and so clear was the articulation of this. And if you go to many African schools and many African countries at that time, we built many universities. Those of you who come from Liberia or Sierra Leone will know that in those early days, the universities that existed at that time were universities such as Furabe in Freetown in Sierra Leone, which was a leading institution then and even now known as the Athens of Africa, because it was the residence of knowledge. That was Africa, identifying her problems. We also recognized that poverty was an issue, and we assumed that having regained independence, we would deploy our intellectual resources and our other resources to ensure that our men and women would not labor under economic desperation. Ghana regained our independence slightly over 60 years ago. And today, the question may be posed: has Africa conquered her identified enemies? Have the ghosts been exorcised? And if you look at Africa today, it is very easy to be depressed. It is easy to be depressed because, as I speak to you now, many African countries do not know peace. And if they know something that is a semblance of peace, it is merely a lull before some storm. Look at Africa now. Look at Ethiopia, which we thought was moving in the right direction. After the civil war in 1984, when the Derg regime had been eliminated, we thought that Ethiopia had been immunized against conflict. Today, there is a fratricidal war going on there in Tigray. People are now identifying themselves not as Ethiopians. And there is no problem with identity, but this identity is of the negative kind. Tigray, because they are Amhara, our enemies. There is no peace and quiet in that land with 100 million Africans, which is a resource which could be deployed effectively. And if today you asked a young Ethiopian in Mekelle, or in Lalibela, or in Addis Ababa, they would want to run away to some far distant country. And I'm quite certain that if you went to Eritrea and you talked to some young man or woman in Asmara, they would want to run away to Dubai or to South Africa. But even in that South Africa that you want to run away to, look at what happened in the last 1 week. That country which was the beacon of hope, the home of the Cape of Good Hope, is now become the Cape of Hopelessness. Brother rising against brother, and suddenly that country that we refer to as the rainbow country is now producing thunder and lightning. And one wonders whether the dreams of the founding fathers of that nation, Albert Luthuli, Walter Sisulu, Governor Mbeki, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and Chris Hani, whether that country will remain the country that we expected it to be. That depresses one. You go down, you go up a little. Only 1 or 2 weeks ago, in the only absolute monarchy in Africa, in Eswatini, you saw what was happening in the streets of Mbambane. Africa is not at ease. And you go up north in Mozambique, that great land of Eduardo Mondlane and Samora Moises Machel, up there in Cabo Delgado, we now have the entire population in disarray. This is Africa for you. And I'm trying to demonstrate that Africa can be depressing. And you don't stop there. Go to the eastern part of Congo. You know, about 2 months ago, the Belgians said that they were returning the only physical remain of Patrice Emery Lumumba, his tooth. Somebody once said that until they bury Patrice Emery Lumumba, Congo will know no peace. Perhaps. Go to the eastern part of Congo. That is perhaps one of the richest countries on the continent of Africa. But the Congolese are happier when they are in Matonge, in Brussels, in Belgium. They are running away. That is Africa for you. And if you go up north, the Central African Republic in Bangui, unrest. You go to Chad, unrest. You go to Burkina Faso, that land of Thomas, Isidore, Noel Sankara, unrest. Go to Mauritania, unrest. Go to Mali, unrest. Go to Cameroon. The Ambazonians are not at ease. Go to Senegal, the Casamance, they are not at ease. Go to Nigeria. That is Africa. It can be depressing. And that is how I understand why many Africans sometimes leave the motherland in order to seek fortune elsewhere. But as Diosagie for Kwame Nkrumah said, even when you leave the mother continent resides in you. And that is why even when you are geographically separated from her, the good doctor, you must still have a medical scheme for your kith and kin several thousand miles away. That is why my good friend Lawyer Ongeri says, I cannot sit here in the comfort of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I must go back home and try to change the mother continent. You know, what you are doing is not new. Others have done it before. In the 19th century, Marcus Garvey of Jamaica tried to do the same thing. William of Trinidad tried to do the same thing. W.E.B. Du Bois tried to do the same thing. In his own unique way, Martin Luther King Jr. tried to do the same thing, not about physical migration, but about temperamental and intellectual migration so that you regain your self-esteem. Malcolm X tried to do the same thing. Stokely Carmichael, who was mentioned here, have tried to do the same thing. Louis Farrakhan tried to do the same thing. My good friend Al Sharpton tried to do the same thing. There is a sense in which that thing to make Africa work is something that we cannot abandon. And you know, throughout history, it is the men and women in different civilizations who sojourned in far distant lands that brought a breath of fresh air to their mother continents. The Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah was here as a student in Lincoln. That is where the spirit of Pan-Africanism caught him. Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria was here. And therefore, when we want and talk about redefining Africa, we must not allow what we consider to be the dark circumstances to dampen our spirit. This United States of America that many think is so great has gone through the valley of the shadow of death, times without number. Is it not this United States of America that fought a war of independence? Is it not in this United States that you had a Boston Tea Party? Is it not this United States that had a civil war? Is it not this United States of America in 1963 that had a civil rights movement? Is it not this United States where George Floyd said, "I cannot breathe"? Is it not this United States? There is not a single nation on earth that does not go through trials and tribulations. Our Africa is going through trials and tribulations. But even as we talk about those trials and tribulations, I can assure you that there are good things that are happening in the continent of Africa. If you have the honor and privilege of traveling through that continent, I do, and I see beautiful things. You know, in 1994, and many of you know this story, an Afro-pessimist had written an obituary about Rwanda after the genocide. Today, if you walk in the streets of Kigali in Rwanda, the streets are as clean as they are here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that is only 25 years. Many people may say many things about that administration, but they have demonstrated that when men and women are committed to an ideal, they are capable of changing their country. So every time that you think that Africa is a lost cause, think about what the Rwandese did. A few years ago, many people thought that Tanzania could not function. You go to Dar es Salaam now, even if You doubt it, go to Dar es Salaam. Within 5 years of the presidency of Magufuli, you go and see the infrastructure that is there. And only 2 weeks ago, in fact, only 1 week ago, they have now ordered 32 electric engine trains from South Korea. Within 5 years, while it had been projected that Tanzania would become a middle-level economy in 2025, they achieved that 5 years ahead of time. It can be done. It can be done. You go to Namibia, in Windhoek, they may have their own problems, but you go and see that it can be done. Go to Botswana, it can be done. Go to Mauritius, it can be done. Go to Seychelles, it can be done. Go to Senegal, it can be done. In other words, there are things that are happening. Even in our own country, Kenya, we have our own problem that there are certain things that are happening which are positive. You cannot wish them away. Go to Uganda and you'll see a few things that are happening that ought to be celebrated. Even in the troubled Ethiopia, there are things that are happening that can be celebrated. And that is why I hold the view that in order to redefine the continent of Africa, we've got to understand that when you are looking at the life of any nation, never ever measure the life of a nation with your very short lifetime. You who are only capable of living at the very best at 400 years, how can you compare your life with a nation which will live for millions of years? You are just but a flash in the pan. You are here today and tomorrow we gather you to your fathers and mothers. So when you are talking about redefining Africa, think about Africa intergenerationally. I remember not so long ago, a year in fact, before President John Joseph Pombe Magufuli died, I had the occasion to have a long conversation with him at the State House in Dar es Salaam. And we had the occasion to talk about Africa. And he asked me, half in jest and half seriously, what I had meant when during the Julius Kambarage Nyerere lecture at the University of Dar es Salaam, when I said Magufulification, he asked, what did you exactly mean? And I told him, this is what I meant. I meant that when I observed your activities before I met you, I got this feeling that you had successfully identified what is wrong with Africa, and that included, among other things, that we must regain our self-esteem. We must begin to believe that we can do things. We must begin to believe that we must take care of our health system. We must begin to believe that we can build our roads, that we can produce things that feed us, that we can add value to our natural resources. And I was saying that to the extent that you are faithful to that agenda, you are a Magulified person. And I believe that that is achievable if the continent has men and women who believe that Africa is capable of resolving her problems. And when we say some of these things, we do not for one moment believe that Africa is going to be a silo that does not deal with the world. We are simply saying that if we want to deal with the world, we must be prepared, because history has demonstrated that fortune favors the vigilant. And I remember once again, in direct answer to your question, what it is that can be done. In the month of April, I had the privilege of having a long conversation with the President of Malawi, President Lazarus Makathi Chakwera. And I told the President, the reason why I requested to meet you is because of the funeral oration that you gave at the funeral of John Joseph Magufuli. Because when I read your oration, you captured the mood of the moment. you are able to understand that in order for Africa to grow, Africa needs a certain kind of leader, a leader or leaders who are selfless. And therefore I come here to Malawi to ask you to give meaning to the word that you spoke. And he asked me, how do you want me to give meaning to the word that you spoke? So I give meaning by allowing our foundation to make Malawi the hub of innovation and invention, which can then be replicated across the continent of Africa. And he said, I give you that opportunity. And in the month of August, next month, I'll be meeting President Chakwera again to begin the process of creating an African hub for invention and innovation, which will then replicate across the continent of Africa. In other words, it is not enough, as you rightly said, to merely criticize because criticize we can. It is not enough to merely critique because critique we can. It is not merely enough to lament because lament we can. It is not enough to intellectualize because intellectualize we can. It is not enough to philosophize because philosophize we can. But it is sufficient that beyond the lamentation, beyond the intellectualization, beyond the philosophization, we must go out there and make the road meet the rubber. And the road only meets the rubber when we recognize that when we seek to achieve the thing that will define our lives, we are going to make mistakes. But there is no comparison between that which is lost by trying and that which is lost by not trying. And that is why we believe that you who are in the diaspora have a duty. This afternoon, I was having a conversation with Dr. Bogonko about the beautiful things that they are doing in healthcare. And I asked myself, they are doing this because some government in some African country is sleeping on the job. And my good friend Ungeri has already said it. It is not the duty of people in the diaspora to talk about healthcare when we have a Ministry of Health. But the gap is there, and it must be filled, and they are filling that gap. Then we got into the statistics, and Dr. Bogonko and I wondered how much the United States of America spends on healthcare. And no sooner had we wondered than he Googled. And he discovered through the Googling process that the United States of America spends $3.8 trillion United States dollars on healthcare. That is per year. That is the total GDP of Africa this year. In fact, more. In other words, all the money that we generate at the African continent, the 55 of us in the United States, it goes into healthcare and is not even sufficient. And that tells you that there is work to be done. Then he told me that he is a member of a body of doctors in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there are 12,000 of them. If you put together all the doctors in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, oh, they are fewer. That is why we are still going to herbalists, because there are no doctors. And I'm suggesting that that is an area of intervention. And that is why I hear you when you talk about the actual representation of Africans in the diaspora so that they can participate in the health care. My good friend, the good professor from Ethiopia will know that the grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is a source of conflict between Ethiopia and Sudan and Egypt, has been partially financed by the Ethiopians in the diaspora. And if it works, it's going to generate 10,000 megawatts. You cannot talk about industrialization when you don't have electricity. You know, if you look at the traffic lights in Minneapolis, they are perhaps twice the number of traffic lights in all East African countries combined. And let me include Ethiopia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the tragedy of our traffic lights is that they are there as monuments. They don't even work. Even when they work, nobody obeys them. Those of you who go home occasionally, whether you are in Liberia, whether you are in Sierra Leone, or Nigeria, or where, when you've got to go to Lagos, you've got to go to Abuja, or Anambra, or Enugu, or Kaduna, or Ogun State in Abeokuta to know that people hate lights. I'm saying, therefore, that in that area, you have a contribution to make. As we were driving in Minneapolis, I saw something that looked like a farm. And I was told it is in the middle of town. And I was told that it's spinach that they were growing. And I was told by my host that it's not dependent on rain-fed agriculture. They know what amount goes into each plant, and they produce spinach. You come to Africa, and if you come to Africa and you have had the fortune of reading the Bible or the Quran, you will have seen how they used to plant in the olden days. They take seed and throw it. And some will fall on soil, some will fall on stone. That is how we still farm in Africa. And we believe that through that method we are going to feed 1.4 billion people. No. That is why, as I speak to you, there is food deficit in Africa. After the Tigray War, there is going to be famine. It is estimated that 4.5 million southern Sudanese are going to lack food. Indeed, as I speak to you now, the World Food Program is there. In the entire Sahelian region, there is no food. And as I speak to you now, those you know, Lake Chad are shrunk by 70%. So that we are not only talking about the absence of food, but we are also talking about the absence of potable water, which means that health burden is going to be higher. That is the Africa that you must come back to. That is the Africa that we must redefine. How can it be that a little country called Israel exports oranges to Kenya? Right now, you talked about Ethiopian coffee, you talked about Kenyan coffee, you talked about Rwandese coffee. Vietnam produces more coffee than all those countries combined. Vietnam. That is the Africa that we must redefine. I've said it before and I'm saying it again. Africa is a continent that produces what it does not consume and consumes what it does not produce. The textile industry in Africa is either dead or in comatose. Why? Because we Africans consume what Europe has rejected, what America has rejected. Those of you who have the fortune of being in the United States of America, I believe periodically you throw away your jeans. You throw away your undergarments. Oh, when they are thrown, they come to Africa. And we consume them gleefully. We wash them and say they are new. That is the Africa that you must redefine. Because how can you be dignified if that which has been rejected is what you celebrate? How can it be? And I'm suggesting to us that the only way we can achieve all these is if we begin to think differently. You have the fortune of being in this part of the world. They have their own problems, but their lives work. If you are in my Nairobi, or in Accra in Ghana, or Abuja in Nigeria, or Monrovia, or Freetown, the light would have disappeared about 5 times since I started speaking. Therefore, when you become the governor, make lights work. It is not magic. It can be done. The good Dr. Bogonko tells me, and I'll not say where he saw it to be a good guest, but he went into some room which was described as an ICU. Africa has the penchant of describing things to be what they are not. Since I came to Minneapolis, I've seen how the houses are built, no fences, beautiful. If you are in any African country, there would be a 6-meter tall fence, complete with broken glasses and dogs. In Nigeria, they would even have another gentleman called a gate man, whose duty is to irritate you. You have seen all these, we must change this. And this requires that we make a solemn vow. And what makes me glad as I conclude is that you have been able to identify the problems and that you are beginning to organize yourselves. That is the only way it's going to be done. Africa has also recognized this. We now have Africa Agenda 2063. We now have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, but those are merely sterile pronouncements. This morning, as we flew from Fort Myers in Florida to St. Paul's and Minneapolis in Minnesota, journey of 3 hours, 15 minutes. And I asked myself, if I was moving from Nairobi in Kenya, I would have passed Tanzania, and I would have met Tanzanian shillings there. And I would have met a Tanzanian immigration officer there. And I would not have stopped there. I would have gone into Zambia and met their currency called the kwacha, and a set of immigration officers. And I would have not stopped there. I would have gone to Malawi in Lilongwe. And I would not have stopped there. I would have gone down to Botswana. 5 countries after 3 hours, with 5 different currencies. How can you grow? You can't. These unviable little African countries can only thrive if we eliminate the tariff and non-tariff barriers. The beauty of this United States of America is that you can decide today to leave here, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and go to Des Moines in Iowa and settle there, because it's one country. And you can leave Des Moines and go up to Duluth and work there. But you try moving from Nairobi in Kenya to Bujumbura in Burundi. Work permit. This is what holds Africa down. I want to go to Mogadishu, work permit. I want to go to Hargeisa, work permit. I want to go to Ethiopia after 1 hour, 50 minutes, bill. Bill. And foreign exchange. You cannot grow. And it is you who have had the advantage of working in this part of the world that can change it. And your children, and I've had the conversation, many of your young children, when you take them home, they think that it is trial by ordeal. Because the circumstances, first of all, when you arrive in your typical African airport, it is dirt. I do not know our affinity as Africans to things that are dirty. Have you ever seen that? You get into an African airport, is this something that is untrue? You just wonder, things just don't work. And yet we know that they can work, because in a few African countries we see them working. So we must change this. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that we have the duty and the capacity to redefine Africa. But don't redefine Africa, your generation that came here. It must be intergenerational. If you do not bring in the young men and women, your children, your sons and daughters to be wedded to this idea of Africa, Africa will become a place that they go to wonder at how their parents and grandparents lived. Yet Africa is the mother continent. And I tell young Africans, don't you wonder what has made Africa attractive all these years? Today, if you fly to Europe or fly from Europe, see the number of young Chinese between the ages of 20 and 30. And I've traveled in many African countries. I go to South Africa, I see young Chinese. And I see a Chinese restaurant. I go to Namibia, Chinese. Botswana, Chinese. Mozambique, Chinese. Zambia, Chinese. Senegal, Chinese. Ghana, Chinese. Nigeria, Chinese. Kenya, Chinese. Chinese are everywhere. Why? Because they know what they want. It is not the Chinese that we should blame, it is us. Because fortune favors those who seek. And if we don't seek, if we are engaged in sorrows and lamentation, and we think that God is going to come and rain manna on us because we are praying and fasting, God is wondering at us. Because the divine instruction by God is you go out there and subdue the world by the sweat of thy brow. God is not in the business of magic. All the things that you can do are resident in your mind. It's the mind that is the standard of the man, as MLK Jr. said. The aeroplane that you fly, it came out of somebody's mind. It was resident here, there, it was woken up. These microphones came out of somebody's mind. Everything is a product of human thought. So, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you, you have come here in this land of plenty, but you have left a land of even more plenty. Don't forget that land. That land must never be forgotten. Is the land that has given birth to all civilizations. That land called Africa. All of us came from there. Whether you want science to prove it for you, all of us came from Africa. Whether you want myths to prove it to you, all of us came from Africa. Come back. When I say come back, I don't mean you've got to be physically there, no. Even this is our land. Even this one. But don't forget and never ever cut the umbilical cord. It is easier said than done. But when the chips are down, I have no doubt in my mind that 400 million Africans in the diaspora are the ones who are going to change the world. You may have your problems with the state of Israel or the Jews. But until 1948, there was not a nation called Israel. There was none. 1948. In 1948, Liberia was independent and had been independent for a long time. Ethiopia was independent and had been independent for a long time. Then in 1948, little Israel popped out in the Levant. A few years later, the economy, the GDP of Israel is larger than the entire sub-Saharan African per capita, excluding Egypt and South Africa. Why? Because even when they were in exile, they remembered that there must be a motherland. You must never forget that. You must never forget that. You must always have your true north. And Africa is not Israel. Africa is bigger than Israel. Africa is better than Israel. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you go home, reflect. Those who have been bitten by the bug of Africanhood, go out there and say like Julius Caesar, Vene, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, and I conquered. Those who have chosen to be here, like Yusuf, conquer here too. And once you have conquered here, share with us. Don't take everything away. Share some with us. And I hope that many of you who are here are going to engage your various embassies, because African embassies are also infamous for men and women who think that their diplomatic assignments is for holiday. They don't work. Engage them and tell them that they have a duty to facilitate you so that you can help the motherland. I hope that that will be done, because an Africa that is redefined is an Africa that is going to be a strong participant in the world. When we say that Africa must be great, we are not saying that Africa must be great that she may conquer anybody. That is not the business of Africa. We are saying that Africa must be great so that she can participate in the affairs of the world on an equal footing with the others. And she can. If everything eluded us, let us be participants in the new revolution. The nanotechnology that we talk about, let us be partakers of it. We now have software engineers, we have doctors, we have people who are technically savvy. Come and help the continent of Africa. Come and redefine the continent of Africa. It is waiting to be redefined, and we all must participate in that grand agenda, and it will be well with us. Because if we don't define Africa, then we will be defined by others. And when you are defined by others, then you lose your humanity. And when you lose your humanities, you become a thing. And when you become a thing, you'll be abused and be humiliated. Choose you now. whether you want to be human beings or you want to be things. God bless.
Secondly, also, do you think corruption is one of the contributing factors as to why young African men and women are risking their life in the Mediterranean Sea in search of a greener pasture? Thank you.
Thank you, Prophet Kimori. And I was touched by one of your tenants of Innovation Center in Malawi. Right now, in the continent of Africa, many African countries are transforming the education system. Good example is Kenya that is doing the CBC, the competence-based curriculum. Do you see these changes as an opportunity for Africa to redefine itself, or is a political opportunity?
Thank you very much for those. Of course, I know there can be many, many questions, but let me speak to those. I believe that education is very important. My good professor, when he had the opportunity to speak, referred us to the book that was written by Carter G. Woodson in 1933, Miseducation of the Negro. Education is at the heart of it. If you look at what is happening, for example, in the Scandinavian countries such as Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, and specifically Finland, whose education system is now being touted as one of the best in the world. Look at countries such as South Korea, which we now know is one of the leading in the arena of innovation. Look at China, look at Japan, look at Singapore, look at Malaysia. What that demonstrates to us is that what we teach our young men and women is at the very heart of how their minds work. And my good sister, Dr. Nkana Chiobrikau, has reiterated the fact that the mind is indeed the standard of who we are. What are we teaching? If we engage our young men and women in rote learning, then they cannot innovate. The world is now talking about innovation. And you go to any African country now, look at our transportation system. Uber, a young person sitting somewhere in San Francisco, now controls a taxi and a boda or Okada or a keke in Africa. And another one sitting in Lithuania. It means that those resources are going to their countries. Why? Education. You look at the area of biotechnology. Can Africa participate in those areas? And I hold the view, therefore, that if Africa wants to compete with the world, we must do something about our education system. We must make our young men and women people who are innovative and who are creative. Some of you young men and women, even the older ones who came to this part of the world with your undergraduate degrees, and you came into this environment, you must have been amazed at the dramatic change. How are you instructed? We are obsessed with examinations. This system is obsessed with the acquisition of knowledge and how that knowledge is going to change the quality of people's lives. I think that education is at the very heart of this, and until and unless African countries look at the education system in a very creative and programmatic manner, we are always going to be the underdogs. And I would have loved myself that education system should not be dealt with in a standalone manner. I remember being asked to speak at a conference in Nairobi where they were discussing the introduction of the competency-based education. And I asked the people who are responsible for curriculum development, where are the teachers in this thing? You cannot allow the teachers to be brought in at the tail end of the process, and you allow the bureaucrats to be the ones who are determining what is going to be taught. It is critical that those who are in the arena are the ones who are given the opportunity to participate in the process of dealing with curriculum. Number two, it is important that we look at our region. If Kenya has an education system that is not understood and appreciated in Tanzania, or in Uganda, or in Rwanda, or in Burundi, or in South Sudan, or in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and yet we are within the East African community, then how do you migrate labor? The beauty of Europe now is migration of labor. You have a student who is learning in Latvia who can move all the way to Portugal because under the Erasmus program, there is migration of labor and there is standardization of the knowledge that is being given to the young people. In the United States of America, it's the same. In Asia, if you go to countries such as China, you go to Cambodia, you go to Laos, you go to Vietnam, there is a sense in which STEM, science, technology, and all those things are being coordinated in a manner that is going to change lives in a manner that will then change, or rather, change attitudes in a manner that will change lives. Education is the game changer. Corruption. You know, there are people who hold the view that corruption is something that is propagated by poverty. In fact, the reverse is the case. It is spiritual poverty that gives birth to corruption. And the political leaders, I've just translated this book, which I'll share with some of you. It's called The Leader. This is the Swahili set book in Kenya called Kigogo, and I've just translated it into English. And it talks about the rot in many African countries. And corruption thrives because we tolerate it. Those of you who live in the United States of America know that if leadership is straight, largely, then things work. You live in a country where you are going to order an item through Amazon, if it is a book, or you order some item and it's delivered for you. You sign for some document and it will be delivered. But a number of African countries are led by men and women whose greatest claim to fame is that they are big thieves. And the tragedy of Africa is that we celebrate thieves. As long as you celebrate thieves and protect thieves, then theft becomes the national creed. And when greed and theft is your national creed, then you cannot grow. Look at some of the men and women who we elect as presidents or elected to office. You are going to campaign now, I do not know, because the fellows you are going to campaign against have stolen so much money that dollar for dollar you are not going to compete with them. So you've got to, it's going to be a tall order. And if you look at the amount of money that Africa loses through corruption, it is in the billions. My good friend Dr. Bogonko talks about healthcare here and the amount of, if only one individual in Kenya or in many African countries, in the Democratic Republic of Congo or Nigeria or Senegal is capable of financing the entire health project of a country. So corruption is at the very heart of it. Our poor quality education is because of corruption. The collapse of our health system is because of corruption. The poor infrastructure is because of corruption. And until the day that you and me are bold enough to say it firmly and clearly to these thieves, whom we should not even call leaders, unless we use the word leader very loosely, then Africa is going to continue to punch below her weight. The beauty, of course, is that there are now a number of countries in Africa where thieves are beginning to be dealt with. A few weeks ago, Zambia buried one of the last of his generation, Kenneth David Kaunda. And Kenneth David Kaunda was the president of Zambia for 24 years. If you've read the book, Why Africa is Poor and What Africans Can Do About It by Greg Mills, when he left office after 24 years, he had only the equivalent of 8,000 United States dollars in his account, and no other account in the world. The same with Julius Kambarage Nyerere. That was a crop of leaders, Samora Moises Machel, Thomas Isidore Sankara. These were leaders of a totally different kind. Today, if they were to come back and to contest for any election, they would lose in the morning. Because the electorate no longer responds to such individuals, the electorate has an inclination to thieves. And it is our duty as a people to ensure that we don't, and we must call them out. Sometimes when I'm speaking in different parts of Africa, or even to political leaders, I am inclined to be a good guest. Then a spirit comes into me and says, call it by its name. Call it by its name. You will irritate them, but if we say it often enough, let me conclude answering that. Don't you see that one of the things that makes, particularly your children, when I know you pay homage, pilgrimage, as you may, to your Aboriginal homes every so often. And as we would have this conversation, when they stay with you for 1 week, they say they want to go back. Why? For many reasons. Because systems just don't work. Do they work because we don't have the resources? No, because somebody has stolen the money. Because somebody has stolen the money. Until the day that we deal with these thieves, Africa is going to continue to suffer. In countries where they deal with these thieves, in Rwanda they deal with the thieves. In Tanzania they deal with the thieves. In Botswana they deal with the thieves. In South Africa, when they try to deal with somebody who is accused of being a thief, you see what has happened? There were riots in the whole of South Africa, and it is now projected that the economy of South Africa will contract by 3%. People came out to say, he may be a thief, but he's our very own. So, it is sad, but the beauty is that you live in a country where there are thieves. I'm not suggesting for one moment that there are no thieves in the United States, they are there. But the thieves in Africa are born by a different mother and father. And their appetite is totally without any boundaries. They don't eat the eggs only. They eat the eggs plus the chicken rather. They go and try to look, these eggs that are inside, let us get them before they are laid. How can you deal with such people? In China, they kill them. I'm not one who is suggesting that people should be killed, but they should be dealt with, and firmly. So thank you very much, and God bless you.
Hello. Yes, Professor, these are the names of the leaders that the professor is going to be handing some
Ian. Nasibu Sayakadugu. Professor Momanyi. And then Haji Yusuf has gone. And Petros is still here. He's left, but somebody can pick on his behalf. Yeah, we can. Thank you very much.
Okay. Professor, we have one last thing. We have a gift from Mitri. The Liberian community has something to present to you, Professor.
This is the future of Africa right here. The organic African paradigm talks about the natural identity blueprint of the African people. The organic African paradigm is the natural identity blueprint of the African people. The Congo is our first priority. You see this right here. This is the heart of Africa. You see those hands surrounding the Congo. The African people have united, and different shades, different colors have sealed off the Congo to all foreigners until the end of time in this future. The African people have regrew the Sahara Desert, and they have rebuilt the pyramids of their ancestors. The children are now preparing to take the animals, the elephants, the rhinos, everything, to travel into the stars, to the other planets, to put life, the African civilization on other planets. The dignity of the African woman has been restored in the moon. And the pyramids have been rebuilt, the cemetery of the African man, his home, the pyramids have been restored across the land. You see the darkness all surrounding. It is the melanin, the carbon, the atom of the African people. You need to understand that 85% of the universe is darkness. And you are created in the image of that darkness. Darkness is not evil as they would have you believe. Because in the beginning, there was darkness and there was water, male and female hovering above each other. And below on earth, that which was created in the image of the Creator, you find an African man and a woman come out of the heart of Africa. And they migrate to Burundi, and from Burundi to Rwanda, and they come all the way up here, and they build civilization and build the world. So this is the future. None of you have to ever worry that we will not get there. We will get there. We will put civilization on the other planets. We are the people who will do that. No one else. We just have to remember this. There is a purpose and a destiny for all Africans globally. Organic African paradigm, your natural identity blueprint is the future. Your soul, your intelligence, your science. Thank you. This is the gift of the professor, and please.